There was a reason Meghan Markle didn't want Prince Harry to go to war with the Daily Mail, and today we now understand why. Harry's relationship with Chelsea Davy, the true love of his life, front and centre at the High Court on day 2 of this explosive case between the delusional Duke and the Daily Mail newspaper. Lots of details about their romance being discussed as Harry's facial expressions were judged in intimate detail. Now, it was telling that when Harry arrived for day 2 of this bombshell case today, an independent journalist asked him about free speech, and he conveniently chose to ignore it.
Harry, how important is free speech alongside press accountability?
Morning, Harry.
Harry, Prince Harry, I love you.
Harry, how important is free speech alongside press accountability?
Just throw a piece.
See you, mate.
And that bald head just glowing on the front page of the UK newspapers, The Times and The Guardian today. Angela Levin is going to be with us for analysis shortly. She is our royal mastermind, Prince Harry's biographer. Very obvious the toll that this case has taken. But first, let's get to the evidence, because there were some key moments inside the courtroom today. There he is, David Sherborne, Harry's slippery and slimy lawyer, revealing lots of the information against the Daily Mail. So, at 11:06, Sherborne moved on to his final example for the Duke of Sussex's case. This was published in 2010, written by Katie Nicholl, who is one of the female journalists that Harry is targeting, alongside Rebecca English, royal editor of the Daily Mail, and Victoria Newton, editor of The Sun. Imogen James from inside the High Court reported it contains specific and intimate details of his private life and relationship with Chelsea Davy, Sherborne says. One line says Harry was a regular fixture at Davy's house. The article also includes their plans as a couple and the Duke's preferences of where he likes to spend the night. Prince Harry says this is highly sensitive information in his witness statement. Sherborne says Prince Harry's evidence is absolutely firm that it couldn't have come from another person other than Davy or him, and neither of them shared this. This could not have conceivably have come from a legitimate source, Sherborne says. Nicholl's evidence is from her notebooks, which shows she obtained these details from Garth Gibbs. He was living alone on the Isle of Wight in semi-retirement in his last year alive during this time. Sherborne says it is utterly implausible that he could have provided this information to Nicholl. Instead, they allege she used unlawful information gathering techniques. He says her credibility becomes central here. But what is also central to me here is the fact that this relationship, now being in the spotlight, highlights the huge difference between Harry's current wife, Meghan Markle, and the woman who he for a long time believed was the true love of his life, Chelsea Davy. Now, of course, we've got to be clear, she's moved on. She's incredibly happy, living a brilliant life with a new husband and children, and not at all pining for Harry. Indeed, Chelsea Davy will be absolutely furious that he is putting her under the international microscope once again. But just think about the contrast here, folks. Think about why Meghan Markle is so clearly unhappy about this. Because Meghan Markle could never be said to be someone who didn't leak intimate details of her private life with Prince Harry to the media, because she did multiple times. There were other instances raised in this bombshell opening statement by David Sherborne in court. Let's get to them. So first, Prince Harry's argument contains 14 articles he says were written using unlawfully gathered information about his private life. The first from 2001, when Prince Harry was chosen as godfather to Tiggy Legg Burke's child. Legg Burke was familiar with keeping information private, Sherborne says, yet the article contained this very private information, and the all-important quote comes from her. Katie Nicholl, there she is again, claims she might have heard it from a party planner and stood it up with a socialite. Neither of them, we say, are plausible as sources, the lawyer continues, and Prince Harry says neither of them would have known. Well, in fairness to Katie Nicholl, Harry actually has no idea where stories come from. So what I'm looking for here is evidence. That's what I need to see. I need to see Harry presenting evidence. We did have some of it yesterday. We'll come to it. But at this point, I see no evidence that Katie Nicholl did anything other than be a good journalist. Remember, it emerged yesterday that she had secretly partied with Prince Harry, that Prince Harry had actually invited her to hang out with his friends after meeting at the Kensington Roof Gardens. But then we get to Chelsea Davy's travel plans. And this one is much, much more difficult for the Daily Mail. This is from 2004. And according to Imogen James, reporting from inside the High Court, what we see are their travel plans together, including the fact that the prince brought her out on a private hunting expedition to a lodge in Argentina, Sherborne says. There are a number of journalists involved in this article feeding different information, the lawyer continues. And that's obviously very critical because we need to see the evidence. An email, and so we're starting to get to the evidence now, from Heather Briley to Caroline Graham at the Daily Mail. Now, do you remember that name? Caroline Graham is the woman who was in hospital with Thomas Markle in the Philippines. The woman who is now close friends with Thomas Markle. This is probably why Harry hates her so much. So an email from Heather Briley to Caroline Graham says, have spoken to contact at British Airways here half an hour ago and offered, then there's $2 in return for a name. He's gone off to investigate. Harry is paranoid about her being outed. Another email says that is shown to the court. Also from Caroline Graham, sent to David Dillon. Now, David Dillon, probably not a name that you have heard, but he remains the current editor of the Mail on Sunday newspaper. Again, an enemy of Harry, given he has printed all of this information previously about Thomas Markle. Sherborne says, we say these emails clearly refer to the payment of information unlawfully obtained through British Airways through payments or blagging. Now, in his witness statement, we start to get to the personal impact Harry claims this has had on him. He talks about distress. He talks about paranoia. He talks about other feelings it generated. And his barrister confirmed that Harry will give evidence on Thursday. Travel plans are, of course, also central to why Prince Harry is coming for Rebecca English, the current royal editor of the Daily Mail, co-host of their Palace Confidential YouTube show. Now, yesterday, this is according to Imogen James reporting from the courtroom again, Sherborne accused her of obtaining from exact plane seats, flight times, and travel plans of Prince Harry's then-girlfriend Chelsea Davy in December 2007. We are hearing more about this article now. Prince Harry's witness statement says this was not only intrusive information, but it also carried security risks. Prince Harry's witness statement says that it shows, or the evidence shows, that English paid £200 for this information to the private investigator Mike Burr, including Davy's seat number. Now, we haven't heard from Rebecca English directly, but according to David Sherborne, she says she doesn't remember this email. I'm not sure if that's going to be good enough, to be honest, if the email was sent. It was entirely frustrating that this information came out while Prince Harry was trying to maintain a private relationship, the Duke says in his witness statement. Prince Harry says it's deeply disturbing seeing this information in the article and that neither he nor Davy were sharing this information with others. It demonstrates irresistibly that English used unlawful information gathering, Sherborne says. Another story in 2007 related to Harry's plans to take Chelsea Davy on a make or break holiday. Email to a Mail staffer, the same private investigator, Mike Burr, said he had to do several sources Chelsea Davy was on standby and then at the last minute paid cash for a ticket at the airport. Maybe this is their way to avoid detection, the email said. The investigators working for the Mail went to such lengths that despite everything the Duke of Sussex and Chelsea Davy did to maintain their privacy, it was entirely frustrated, Sherborne says. He says the inference the information was unlawfully obtained was absolutely obvious. Now, of course, he may come to that conclusion, but that doesn't mean he is correct. These are his opening statements, and of course, the Daily Mail is fighting back. But let's pause and bring Angela Levin in here now, because Angela, you are Harry's biographer. You have looked very closely, of course, through all of his previous relationships. Chelsea Davy as a human being is in stark contrast to Meghan Markle. She was the height of discretion. She didn't want to be famous. She didn't leak details of their private lives. She didn't leak details of Harry's family. She didn't pose for magazines. You know, she didn't want TV shows. She could have had all of that. She didn't want any of that, right? And it's very clear Meghan Markle is so unhappy about the fact that Chelsea Davy is now front and centre in this court case with intimate details of Harry's relationship with her going to be broadcast to the world again. What do you make of it all?
Well, it's very interesting because I heard a lot from Harry about her, and I saw her quite a lot. And you're quite right, she wasn't interested in being on the television and having loads of money and sitting in the best chairs or anything like that. But when Harry started learning how to ride airplanes, he completely abandoned her. He left her alone, stopped going up to see her. She was doing a course for something to do with animals and things like that. And he just didn't bother to see her for quite a long time. So all this crying and what's going on, it's absolutely his fault. She was very, very upset because she had quite a lot of friends in the college, and she wanted him to come and meet them, and he absolutely refused. So she felt he'd dropped her forever, and she had to fill out a form, and it said, you know, are you one or are you two? She said, I am one. And she was heartbroken because he'd dumped her. So there's a slightly different view of that. But the fact that he would remember 19 years of what he was waiting for is just pathetic in the extreme.
It is, but you can understand why Meghan won't like this, Angela, because they are such different women.
Of course, well, any woman, Meghan doesn't like that at all. She'll be absolutely beside herself. And I think that's why she's starting doing all those ridiculous dances and telling everybody what's going on and being as if she loves him so much, which I doubt. And yeah, she's been jealous all the time. I think she was very upset when Harry insisted on taking her to the wedding. But she allowed him to, because you're not going to have a fight with someone who's going to be your husband. But she didn't really want that. But he did. He was very, very keen to do that. And she thought very carefully whether she would go. And in the end, she did go. And she was charming and she was very nice. And that was it. But he's missed out enormously there. But on the other hand, I think she's been saved, because you hear from even this story of his, you know, what he hates and what he doesn't hate, and trying to kill everybody off around him who've made a mistake or haven't even made a mistake, that she might have had quite a difficult man to have lived with. He doesn't seem to be getting better from anything that he's had for a very long time.
No, indeed. And that was the thing. Chelsea Davy was such a good influence on him. And people are looking so closely at him, Angela, because he knows people are totally aware of all of his little individual looks. And actually, the Daily Telegraph was watching him for the whole time in court. They wrote a piece headlined, "If his high-stakes legal battle weighed on Harry, he gave little away." Because that's the point. He knows that Meghan Markle will be looking for any sign if this impacts him emotionally when he's hearing all of this evidence about Chelsea Davy. Now, We have to present both sides of this, of course, Angela. And let me just wrap up what David Sherborne said finally, hitting back at the Daily Mail. He said, none of the smoke and mirrors or the carefully orchestrated propaganda and attacks on witnesses can save Associate at this time. They have to live by their all or nothing defence. He says the damages must be significant, but it is not the claim for damages which brings these claimants here. It's uncovering the truth. So the suggestion there is that none of this is about the money. Now, I would argue certainly there is a war against the press. This is a big part of it. Harry was in court sitting alongside Liz Hurley and her son Damien Hurley today, and there was fascinating insight from within the court about what they were reading. Imogen James reporting, I can't help but notice that sitting on the desks of Prince Harry and Elizabeth Hurley are copies of Rogue, The Rise and Fall of Mazza Fake Sheikh Mahmood. The book is described as an analysis of the controversial journalistic career of the reporter Mahmood. He worked for the News of the World and The Sun on Sunday and was sent to prison after an infamous sting on a pop singer, that being Talisa. So I thought that was interesting. It's a little bit of colour from the court. It shows you Harry is so far down this rabbit hole. Then the Daily Mail hit back. And it was a huge surprise because they've used a totally different tactic to David Sherborne. They wrapped up their case very quickly. They kept it succinct and said, we're going to leave it to the individual journalists to go into the details in future. But it is very important that I present their key points because effectively what they're saying is all of these stories were just obtained through normal journalistic practices. A lot of them being leaked by Prince Harry's friends, which he will not like. So legitimate sourcing is the word that Anthony White, KC, used when he was speaking on behalf of the Daily Mail. He says the articles don't appear out of nowhere and are generally the continuation of ongoing widespread reporting. Many contain what has previously been reported, he said, calling the sources inherently likely for the articles in question. And he says they present a compelling pattern of legitimate sourcing. Now, we know that Harry has come personally for the big beasts of Fleet Street, notably Katie Nicholl, very famous TV personality who talks about the royal family. I like her. I know her. Rebecca English, Daily Mail's current royal editor. And now Victoria Newton thrown into the mix too. She is the editor of The Sun newspaper who has a very close relationship with Prince William and King Charles. So Harry is trying to slay these three big female beasts. I mean, there's Victoria actually with King Charles. Now, Anthony White KC, she used to work for the Daily Mail, by the way, which is why she's come up here, says the allegations are made against the company, but in reality made against the individual journalists. He called the allegations very serious. All of the journalists would have to be lying to the court about the articles. This has an inherent improbability. His next point is that most articles were written between 15 to 20 years ago. It's a striking feature of A&L's defence that it has been able to obtain evidence from almost all of the journalists that wrote the articles in question, explaining to their best recollection the sourcing of the article. Though it is inevitable, given the length of time, that some circumstances have changed, some have died, some have retired, others have moved to new company, it makes it more striking that they have produced so much evidence. The fact that they are willing and able to do so speaks volumes of the culture of A&L. And he said the case by Prince Harry is clutching at straws. He believes that generic evidence is being used when it was presented about another newspaper and attempting to be then used to claim that the Mail was behaving in a particular manner. So that's the fight back. That's the pushback, Angela Levin. Now, I'm looking at this totally impartially because, yes, I did previously work for the Mail, but I was never involved in anything illegal, and I don't think any journalist should do anything illegal. I think it's disgusting.
I was there a long time and I never had any problems.
No, exactly. But the problem is, Angela, there are emails here. I mean, Rebecca English might say, well, I don't remember this email being sent, but it was. It was. So what were you doing? Contacting a private investigator who was trying to blag information about Chelsea Davy's seat on a plane. This becomes difficult for the Mail from where I'm sitting.
Right from the opening seconds, the key point is brutally clear. This case was never meant to happen, at least not from Meghan Markle's point of view. Why? Because the moment Prince Harry steps into court, he loses control of the narrative. And what instantly explodes into public view? Chelsea Davy, the woman many still regard as the great love of Harry's life. Day 2 of this trial doesn't center on hacking or journalism ethics. It centers on Harry's past, his expressions, his discomfort, and his inability to escape a relationship that predates Meghan entirely. And then comes the telling moment. Harry is asked directly about free speech and he ignores it. That silence speaks volumes. This is not about balance. This is not about press accountability versus freedom. This is personal revenge, and Harry doesn't want to debate the principle, only the punishment. The imagery is devastating. Harry's appearance is scrutinized. His expressions are dissected. His body language dominates front pages. This isn't a confident prince standing for justice, this is a man under visible strain, sitting in a courtroom where every glance is weaponized. And that's before the evidence even begins. This is where the case takes a dangerous turn. David Sherborne presents articles detailing Harry's relationship with Chelsea Davy, where he stayed, how often, and their future plans. Harry claims the information could only have come from Chelsea or himself. But here's the problem. Assertion is not evidence. Sherborne says it's utterly implausible the source was legitimate. But implausible does not mean impossible, and courts require proof, not feeling. Meanwhile, Chelsea Davy, a private citizen who deliberately avoided fame, is dragged back under the global microscope without consent. If Harry truly cared about protecting her privacy, he would never have allowed this. This is the elephant in the courtroom. Chelsea Davy is described accurately as discreet, uninterested in fame, resistant to media exposure. And by contrast, Meghan Markle's history tells a very different story. Carefully curated interviews, leaked narratives, media cooperation when it suited her. This contrast explains why Meghan reportedly despised this case. Because it doesn't flatter her, it exposes the difference. Harry accuses journalists, particularly Katie Nicholl, of unlawful behavior. But again, we hit the same wall. Where is the proof? Being unhappy about coverage does not make journalism illegal. Not liking a story does not mean it was hacked. And when it emerges that Harry himself socialized with journalists, even inviting them out socially, the claim of constant victimhood starts to crumble. Now we get closer to substance. Emails involving private investigators and airline information are serious, and this is where the Daily Mail genuinely faces difficulty. However, even here, the legal hurdle remains. Was information unlawfully obtained? Or sourced aggressively but legally? The distinction is crucial, and Harry keeps collapsing it.
I think when Rebecca English did that, might have gone on that flight, she'd only just become dealing with the royal family. So, you're not going to remember everything you've done. She's now the queen of it. She's, ironically, they all love her and she's terrifically good. And but she doesn't remember everything she did. And I think it's 2007. I mean, how can you remember all these things? You can't, because you're doing so much work. It's not that you're trying to get away from something. It's just you can't remember that. I can't remember loads of things I've written, memos and reminders, and it's not possible to remember all that.
Now, there was also, Angela, a lot of information that emerged from Liz Hurley too, because what I just have to explain is that Harry is not taking this case alone. There are 7 claimants. They include Elton John and David Furnish. They include Sadie Frost, Doreen Lawrence. There's a whole load of them. So Liz Hurley got her moment too. And what's telling is this is where Victoria Newton, the current Sun editor, the ally of Prince William and King Charles, is directly accused. So let me take you back to the reporting from Imogen James inside the court. There's complaints from Elizabeth Hurley about 14 articles between 2002 and 2011. The first written by Victoria Newton in 2002 about the paternity of her son. Her son, who, by the way, was sitting alongside her in court. That's Damien. Now, Hurley says very few people knew the details about the heated conversation she had with Steve Bing. Remember, this was a huge story at the time. He is the father of Damien Hurley, and there was a big paternity battle. An invoice from Victoria Newton, now editor of The Sun, to the private investigative firm TDI, falls on the exact date that Hurley had checked into hospital to have her baby, Sherborne says. The invoice bears the annotation, Ms. Hurley pregnant. Sherborne says this shows Newton's persistent interest in Hurley. Newton has no explanation for the information in the article. Sherborne continues. Now, we don't know if Victoria Newton is intending to take the stand. Then there's another article, this one from September 2002, which relates to the difficulties Hurley faced meeting a new partner and being single as a mother. Sherborne says they are very, very private details in this article. It's her innermost thoughts and feelings about her private life as a result of having had a baby. In the face of this exclusive detail, the journalist Nicole Lampert, who still works for the Mail as well on a freelance basis, is vague about where she got the information from. There are a number of chunky payments made to private investigating firm ELI from Lampert at the time. 2 payments to ELI on the 1st and 2nd of October 2002 are titled Nicole Lampert Inquiries. Both are worth £170. So definitely showing that there was some type of payment made. Now, Elton John, he also features in this trial. Remember, he's the person who brought Harry in to all of this madness. And at one point, Sherborne, during his opening statement, did turn to the cases of Elton John. And this was much more recent. This was 2010. And the Daily Mail published details about the birth of their surrogate son in Los Angeles, obtaining his birth certificate before they did. Journalists Ben Todd and David Gardner claimed the information had been given to a journalist over the phone by the LA Registry Office. David Sherborne asked whether it was plausible a registrar would provide confirmation of the birth over the phone to a journalist before a birth certificate was even issued. No, he says, it was obtained through blagging. This generally means calling up officials and pretending to be someone else to get information which reporters would not normally be given. So, Angela, what's clear is that there are other examples coming from these other celebrities. But again, not all of this is watertight to me at all. It's very easy for someone to assume where you might have got a story. And I point to my story, the big story, when I revealed Megxit, the fact that Harry and Meghan were planning to quit the British royal family, relocate from the United Kingdom. I mean, a huge story that I had to work very hard on. And Harry assumed that I got it from someone who I didn't get it from and accused me of illegality. So the point is, sometimes the subject of a story does not know where the journalist procured the story from. They might assume, but if you're actually going to court and making accusations of illegal behaviour, you have to do more than just assume, Angela.
Well, they have to prove it, and the judge will then make a decision. I mean, now they're just sort of saying what they feel and giving you all the dates and all that thing. But they have to be able to prove it. Everybody has to. And if they can't prove it, then the judge makes his own decision. Does it seem that this would have happened? And he will start doing that on Thursday in his mind, and then it would take weeks and weeks before it's sorted. But he will do it. He can tell whether these things are done properly or not, or whether they're very sort of superficial. I think certainly for Rebecca English, it's a nonsense, and to sort of try to destroy her, if he gets very excited and negative, Harry will, make a mess of it. But I don't know that the judge would actually be moved at all. I mean, he's doing this sort of thing all the time, and he'll be going through everything very clearly. And we have to know as well that he's absolutely fed up with Harry, because he keeps coming in and back and in and back and driving them mad and not behaving in a way that you do in this sort of this sort of what's happening. And he's just getting very fed up. And he'd said once, what you feel is not what's actually going to happen. He was very cross that Harry's saying, I feel very bad about it. That's not the truth. That's not the way it works. And, that's quite right. And he will make a judge. But then Harry might go back to a high court and try and do something else. I mean, it's just, he's been doing it for years and years, and he still doesn't understand quite what is needed. As you say, you have to make sure things are absolutely exact, and you have to be able to prove it. It's no good saying, I can't remember. It's not. They might think, oh, well, it's over 20 years. Maybe we'll say something about it. But I don't see that 20 years should be taken in. It's just too long a time. It's ridiculous. And I mentioned one more person who's there, which I feel very strongly about, and that's Doris Lawrence, Stephen
Doreen
Lawrence.
Lawrence. Yeah, Stephen Lawrence is who you interviewed when you were at the Daily Mail. I think we've got it to look at.
Exactly, yes. And I can only say that the paper bent over backwards for her in every possible way. They were so nice. I spent 4 hours talking to her to get an interview out of her because she was crying and on my shoulder and all that. And then she goes wham against the paper because Harry sort of talked to her in 2022 and persuaded her that the paper were doing it in a very bad way. But I did loads of interviews with them. I didn't do anything bad. I was asked, she wanted to see me, so I went there, and the father. And why I couldn't see how anybody would want to actually find out more things. They weren't interested in doing something like that. She was an ordinary woman with an ordinary father and an ordinary son who wanted to do well with his GCEs. And I think that is what Harry's decided to do, that he would persuade someone that, they're working with somebody who is awful and nasty, and, you'll get some money from them.
Indeed. Now, Angela, what do you make of people who are looking at Harry's appearance and just saying, God, this man is not well? I mean, if you look at this from Princess Carparkle, she juxtaposed the picture from January the 16th, 2021 and January the 19th, 2026, 5 years. And she says, this isn't aging. This is 5 years of loss, unhappiness, resentment, loneliness, and regret. No one will ever convince me that Harry is content with his life and so in love. A happy and fulfilled life doesn't do this to you. I'd say call your family, Harry, grovel, apologize, do what you have to do, but go home. But I think that bridge is burned to ash. His wife is slowly destroying him, but then again, you get what you pay for. Angela, the pictures of Harry at court looking like a destroyed man, I mean, they are striking. It's pretty hard to deny.
It was a huge shock to see that. I mean, he looks actually, obviously he's in a smart suit, but he looks as if he sleeps on the street, He's got the bald bit and it's all over the place. It's not neatly done cut, so it would fit in with the baldness. And he's got sort of trails at the back. And if you compare it to about 6 months ago, then it was all cut and neat. Now, if he's coming to here, it should look decent. And it's not. It looks rubbishy, doesn't it? It looks absolutely rubbishy. And it's he should know better. But I don't think that will persuade his father to let him come into the royal family.
No, it's like they all warned you. We all warned you. You've been ruined by Megxit, Harry, and by this case, and by pursuing this case, which, to come full circle, Meghan didn't actually want him to pursue. It's one of maybe the only decisions that Meghan has got right since Megxit. But Angela, Meghan Markle has been responding in her own way to us here at Outspoken, to you specifically. This is all over what is really going on between her and her mother, Doria Ragland. Well, I stand by every word of my reporting. We will find out what Angela Levin has to say.
Rebecca English becomes a central target. Harry alleges she obtained precise travel details and seat numbers, information he claims created security risks. But again, her alleged defense is simple: she does not remember the email. And that may sound unsatisfactory emotionally, but legally, memory failure is not guilt. Especially when the events are nearly 20 years old. Harry leans heavily on distress, paranoia, and emotional harm. But courts are not therapy sessions. Judges don't rule on how you feel, they rule on what can be proven. This is where Harry repeatedly fails. He confuses personal pain with legal certainty. Angela Levin delivers the most devastating insight of the entire segment. Chelsea Davy didn't leave because of the press. Harry abandoned her. He stopped visiting. He disengaged. He withdrew. This shatters the romantic revisionism Harry now presents. And it reframes the case entirely. This is not about protecting a lost love. This is about rewriting history. The defense strategy is ruthless and smart. They argue. Stories were continuations of existing reporting. Sources were legitimate. Journalists are willing to testify. Allegations require all journalists to be lying. That is a high bar, and Harry may not clear it. Calling the case clutching at straws is not hyperbole. It's strategic. Harry isn't suing institutions, he's targeting individuals. Katie Nicholl, Rebecca English, Victoria Newton. 3 powerful women in journalism. To win, Harry must prove intentional criminal behavior, not just uncomfortable reporting. That's a monumental challenge. The judge is reportedly fed up. Why? Because Harry keeps returning to court without adapting his approach. Time weakens memory. Evidence decays. Context changes. Courts don't operate on vibes or vendettas. Other claimants, Liz Hurley, Elton John, are pulled in. Some evidence raises eyebrows. Some does not. But bundling weak claims with stronger ones risks contaminating the entire case. A crucial reminder: even Harry has wrongly accused journalists of illegality before, including over Megxit. This reinforces a pattern. Harry assumes he knows the source. But assumptions are not proof. Harry looks broken, disheveled, exhausted. This isn't aging, it's obsession. Years of resentment, court cases, isolation. And the most brutal line of all: call your family, Harry. This case is not about money, but it is about control. Control of the past. Control of the press. Control of personal narrative. And the more Harry fights, the more he exposes what he's trying to hide. Now I want your opinion. Do you believe Prince Harry is exposing genuine wrongdoing, or is this a deeply personal vendetta dressed up as justice? Comment below. Like if press freedom matters. Subscribe for uncensored royal commentary. Because this case isn't over, and the truth won't be decided by feelings.